I'm Claire Dooley. You're watching CHD TV, and this is the Geoengineering Report, where we identify the threat in the skies. In the name of saving the planet, oceans are becoming laboratories for dangerous experiments. From toxic algae blooms to dead zones the size of small countries, we investigate how geoengineering efforts may be accelerating ocean death, not preventing it. Our expert Dane Wingington breaks down how short-term climate schemes carry long-term ecological costs.
Let's talk about geoengineering over the oceans. What's the agenda there? What do you mean by over the oceans? What are they doing there?
Many of the climate engineering elements, and we have published science study from some of the very few scientists that are willing to address this issue, that it appears coal fly ash, a toxic material, is being used as a base material for the climate engineering operations because they have lots of it. It has some of the constituents that they want to utilize for other forms of geoengineering over the oceans. It's called ocean fertilization, which means elements like iron, that's part of coal fly ash, it's part of the climate engineering solar radiation management dispersions. When that settles down to the sea surface, it spawns algae blooms, which take up some of the excess CO2 that's building up in the atmosphere. But at what cost? It kills that section of the ocean. It deoxygenates everything. And again, this is back to the pharmaceutical cure. Take this for that symptom. And by the way, it can cause this downstream list of consequences, including death. And I mean, it's mind-numbing. It's truly mind-numbing to what they will do to hide part of the problem at the cost of ensuring the planet's life support systems completely fail. So ocean iron fertilization, again, that is a form of geoengineering, another extremely devastating, damaging form. And what do we have around the globe right now? Dead zones in the ocean everywhere. Over 500 dead zones. The oceans are dying by the day. We have dead zones in the Gulf of Mexico as big as 10,000 square miles. That means there are hypoxic or anoxic zones, low or no oxygen. The oceans are superheating, by the way, as well. And here's a real bottom line factor that few people even begin to try to understand. The planet's cloud making processes are breaking down, and climate engineering is core to that. Doesn't mean we don't have deluges in places, but for example, in Northern California, where I'm at, Polly, we're seeing a fraction of the normal cooling cumulus clouds that we would see. You know, the white puffy clouds, Polly, when they float in front of the sun, you do feel an instant cool down because it really blocks the sun. We're seeing a fraction of those clouds, and we know climate engineering particulates dissipate those clouds. We know the frequency transmissions do the same. If the planet loses its cloud making processes or diminishes those processes, climate engineering diminishes those processes, we're done. We're done. The planet is superheating right now. And again, that can't be hidden for much longer.
What is SRM?
Solar radiation management. That's the same operations we're talking about here. And again, they use acronyms for all these. It's just simply masking weather warfare, but they can and are, again, temporarily and toxically cooling large regions down. And that tends to confuse and divide the population as to the true state of damage done. But of course they're engaged in these operations. Again, any notion that they're not is, I mean, Polly, doesn't it puzzle you that this is so visible in our skies and so many people want to pretend it's just, quote, condensation?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that most people watching this are above that. But yes, we do hear it even in our movement.
We encourage people to just look at the mechanics of this as well. And we've been over this before, but this is important to remember. All commercial carriers and all military tankers are equipped with what's known as a high bypass turbofan jet engine. It's a jet powered fan. 90% of the air that moves through that is not combusted. So by design, that engine is nearly incapable of producing a, quote, condensation trail.
We love hearing from you at CHG TV. We always are going through your emails and, sending them to each other and discussing the pictures you're sending and, whatever comments you're making. So please continue doing so. You can reach out to us at goodmorning@chg.tv. Thank you so much for watching the Geoengineering Report, and we'll see you next time on CHG TV.
perhaps the greatest lie ever perpetrated on populations all over the world is the condensation trail lie. What we're seeing in our skies is not condensation. It's sprayed particulate dispersions with very few exceptions.
They shouldn't be there. Jet engines burn clean. So if there's anything coming out of them, it's an additive.
They're absolutely not contrails. Contrails do not linger, dissipate, and go into cloud coverage, period, in the report.
And I kept saying to people, what is this? Because now the sky is no longer blue, it's starting to turn gray. And what I found was kind of like it was not socially acceptable. We're all going to pretend this is not really happening. And I thought, oh, this is very bad.
Most are unfamiliar with a science term called global dimming. That term refers to the amount of direct sunlight that no longer reaches the surface of the planet due to light scattering particles that are building up in the atmosphere. And although many of these particles are from industrialized pollution, the larger majority are from the ongoing climate engineering solar radiation management operations. This engine, a high bypass turbofan jet engine, this is the engine that is on all military tankers and all commercial carriers, is in essence a jet-powered fan. 90% of the air that moves through this engine is non-combusted. This engine by design is nearly incapable of producing any condensation trail except under rare and extreme circumstances. And again, we have film footage of aircraft flying at altitude with nozzles visible, turning on and off. That is the end of the argument. Since even before man could fly, there was an effort to try to modify the weather. We have weather modification patents going back 100 years plus.
These are historical films of what can be done with a biplane, a small biplane that carries a very small payload. And that much can be done. How much more can a fully loaded military tanker, KC-10, KC-135, C-17 Globemaster, how much more material can they put in the air? About 500 times more with a single tanker.
In regard to the condensation trail narrative, many refer back to the trails left by World War II bombers as proof that we are only seeing condensation trails in our skies. But geoengineeringwatch.org found on military archives film footage, which we posted, of World War II B-17s at altitude turning off a sprayed dispersion. We know that climate engineering was deployed immediately after World War II, so testing was absolutely ongoing. Clearly, these bombers were used for beta testing. Film footage proves it.
Weather was a weapon used over Vietnam. Would you expect that to be then deleted from the availability? No. To continue to expand the scientific aspects of it, to have it available in your portfolio of weapons would be a natural process. Therefore, should you expect that it is available on demand to have the ability to modify weather? Absolutely, within this country and others.
Climate engineering is the crown jewel of the military-industrial complex. Climate engineering has been used to destabilize and topple nations all over the globe, facilitating military occupations by hostile countries like the US. We know that some of these countries are having their precipitation cut off because they have stated so on the floor of the UN, like the president of Iran stating emphatically that NATO weather modification programs were cutting off the precipitation to Iran, but US media never covered it.
We have an economic model operating globally, which is operating based on covert force. And I have very serious questions after watching the financial patterns as to whether that financial force or that force includes weather warfare.
People were coming to me, telling me about this. So because of that, I went to the government in Ottawa under Freedom of Information. There was a 40-page report, of which half the pages were completely blank, and the other half had a lot of blank outs. But there was sufficient information to tell me that, yeah, they're aware. They call it geoengineering.
One of the big problems is that when we find some new technology, we get all excited by it, by the potential benefits of that technology, and often implement it and use the technology before we have any idea of the negative effects.
Shouldn't it be considered that every breath we take is laden with highly toxic particles that are wreaking havoc in our own bodies? Particles that aren't being reported by any air quality testing systems. Any official air quality testing are looking for PM10 or PM2.5, 2.5 microns at best. The climate engineering nanoparticulates are exponentially smaller. They go virtually unreported.
These nanomaterials generate reactive oxygen species in biological materials, damage tissue, lead to advanced aging, cause cancer, causative agents of dementia. So, yeah, we might think that we're doing something positive for humanity to save our species, but we're also poisoning